Hello, my name is Corey Kenny. I'm a Masters of Architecture student at Curtin University. I am also an Indigenous man from Darkinjung country on the New South Wales Central Coast. My long-term ambition is to use my qualifications to promote my culture, to raise awareness for my culture, and to help improve the lives of my people. Today's presentation is a reflection of this ambition. I will present to you a unique architectural proposal called Boodjar Village, which is an attempt to use the built environment to remind colonial Australia that it has an Indigenous past. In my opinion, it is a necessity that our urban environments begin to offer Indigenous spaces. After 200 years of displacement and dispossession, 70% of Indigenous people now live in urban environments. But the urban fabric does not reflect this statistic. It is time to break down the notion that Indigenous people do not belong or do not exist in our cities. Boodjar Village is necessary for the following reasons. It will introduce a modern and sophisticated Indigenous vernacular. It will challenge the perception of primitive indigeneity. It will attempt to provide an urban place to an historically dispossessed people. It will use the successful model of the gay village to force acceptance of Indigenous culture. There is a great deal of writing in the field of identity politics which indicates that the gay urban village has transformed the reputation of the LGBTQI community from what was considered a dirty underclass in the 1980s to a fashionable, desirable and consumerable culture today. By introducing an Indigenous vernacular, Indigenous consumer spaces and places for Indigenous people to find each other, it is not unreasonable to conclude that this model could have similar outcomes. The landscape plan of Boodjar Village immediately introduces a strong Indigenous vernacular using the famous boomerang form. The boomerang form is an organic juxtaposition to its surroundings and a clear breakaway from colonial traditions. The layered and stepped assembly of the boomerang-shaped levels allows the Indigenous concept of country to be imagined vertically. For Indigenous people, the idea of country is a connection to and a care for the land. This connection is evident in the 4 generous rooftop gardens, which are accessible to all residents to enjoy. This freedom of spatial movement and accessibility is important as it encourages a sense of equality and egalitarianism within the village. It also gives residents who are on lower levels the opportunity to enjoy the city views to the south, river views to the east, and parkland views to the west. We will now explore a number of plan views to further understand the benefits of the Indigenous village. This ground floor plan comprises a lobby which leads to an Indigenous restaurant which I have named Auntie's Kitchen. It is imagined that such a place will be an informal place for Indigenous people to connect and to be found. The idea of finding each other is particularly important as Indigenous people have systematically been displaced not only from their lands, but also from their families and communities. Importantly, the restaurant is open to the external spaces and faces directly towards the ceremonial performance space. The Level 1 plan shows how Boodjar Village has retained vast amounts of open green space and gardens for its residents, as well as the retention of 3 large gum trees already existing on the site. Level 4 offers communal facilities such as a lap pool, yoga room, sauna, steam room, kitchen, lounge room and change rooms. Boodjar Village will offer all the luxuries which are expected of a modern, sophisticated apartment complex. Level 6, Level 7 and Level 8 are fully accessible rooftop gardens with circular lawned areas. Boodjar Village is unique as it will offer a sand-filled ceremonial space. While it is true that Indigenous culture has modernised and urbanised, cultural traditions are still practiced today. Indigenous dance is an expression of the Dreamtime stories, which always speak about man and his relationship to the Boodjar, otherwise known as the earth. Taking pride of place at the Smith Street entrance and lawn, Indigenous culture can be enjoyed by the community walking by and by residents from balconies above. Such a space is crucial for raising awareness of and fostering acceptance of Indigenous culture in our urban communities. The boomerang vernacular is also evident in elevation. The form has been repeated in large shade fins which dress and delineate the townhouses on the Stirling Street side of the building. The boomerang is also a feature of the columns which hold up the cantilevered floor and roof slabs. Of note is the Smith Street entrance, with the boomerang also doubling as an archway to welcome visitors into the village. The entryway is crucial. It acts as a physical Indigenous threshold which invites you to leave your preconceived ideas of the world behind and asks you to open your mind to a different and more inclusive world. Boodjar Village also provides a double-level creative space, located in what could be called the central tree trunk, which holds up the building. Indigenous Australians are famous for their distinct artworks, which are region and tribe specific. Like dance, practicing art is a way of passing down Dreamtime stories through the generations. Along with dance, these traditions are vital to retaining culture, forming identity, and strengthening communities. The building shown in section reveals the internal spaces. Although quite a complex building, the levels are arranged around 4 elevator shafts and fire escape stairs. As a relatively skinny building form, most apartments are double-fronted, which enable an abundance of light. This double-fronted arrangement also takes advantage of the surrounding views, whilst the boomerang angles are designed to reduce direct overlooking into its neighbours. In close-up detail, the building envelope is of a standard double brick construction. As a natural and somewhat abundant material, the red brick colouring and rocky texture is a carefully considered choice for our Indigenous vernacular. As one of the hottest cities in the world, it was necessary to design an operable shade mechanism to protect the building from solar irradiation. Vertical fins made from charred and blackened timber are positioned on the north, east, and western curtain walls. The fins also act to vertically unify the floor levels and reduce the impact that the balconies have on disrupting the boomerang form. I will conclude the presentation with the following rendered images, which express the organic form of the exterior, the organic nature of the materiality, and the Indigenous heart of the project bound together by the notion of the Indigenous Boodjar. I hope I have been successful in challenging your perceptions of what it means to be a modern Indigenous Australian. I believe it is important for modern Indigenous people to have urban spaces to share, urban spaces to find each other, and urban places to practice traditions. Such spaces should have a sophisticated Indigenous urban vernacular, which break away from colonial symbolism and in which Indigenous people can identify with. It is also imagined that such spaces will teach non-Indigenous people that colonial Australia has an Indigenous history. Thank you for your time.